Did Andy Warhol predict social media in 1969? You're going to have to let me know when the presentation's done and see what you think. For those of you who don't know, Andy Warhol was the leader of the pop art movement. I loved pop art. I loved Andy Warhol, I loved Claus Oldenburg, Keith Haring, and those were the guys that inspired me to do art when I was in high school and do something constructive, okay? And then I ended up going to art school. And Andy Warhol, for those of you who don't know, went to college in the 40s. He basically studied commercial art. He wasn't a fine artist, okay? And then he moved to New York City, where he got a job in commercial art and went to work for an advertising agency. And then he got more involved in the art community, and you'll probably know some of his famous works of like Marilyn Monroe. He did graphic pictorial images of celebrities. He did a bunch of movies. He did some sculpture of his famous Brillo pad boxes. And then he opened a studio called The Factory, which the art community just couldn't believe he would call his studio The Factory. And then he later co-founded a magazine called Interview. So what is pop art? Okay, and I want you to think about pop art in terms of social media, okay? Because I want you to see how Andy Warhol was really in a position to make this prediction, just based on his life experience at the time. So pop art is just like it sounds. It's popular, comes from popular culture. So the subject matter of pop art tends to be celebrities, things that are in the news, everyday items, could be this computer, this microphone, okay? The other attribute to pop art is how it's executed. It's executed not in traditional terms of like you would think of painting or chiseling in rock. It's used in commercial art techniques, silk screening, printing, those types of things. If it's a sculpture, it tends to be packaging. Claus Oldenburg made gigantic stuffed objects, okay? The other thing about pop art is it's mass-produced. So unlike a Picasso, where you'd have to pay thousands, maybe millions of dollars to own, pop art was very accessible because pop art was produced and was sold. And so basically the way the artist made money is if he could sell a lot of his paintings, he could make a lot of money. If no one liked it, he wasn't going to make any money at all, okay? So now, what's social media, okay? Social media is really, I think we talked about this as a room full of technologists. I think that social media is the opposite of technology. It has made it so that anybody, you don't have to be a technologist anymore. You don't even have to go to college, and you could have the most popular blog in the world, okay? So what social media has done is that has made it very easy for people to share their ideas, their art, their videos. You can even self-publish books now, okay? What's the other thing about social media? It's easy to share, right? We can share our information, right? Similar to how pop art was mass-produced. You can share your blog post. If you have enough people following you, you could literally share your blog post today with millions or thousands of people, okay, that are interested in your piece. The other part about social media that's similar to pop art is that it's all about authority, right? If someone likes you, it's got to be good. So the more people that like your Facebook page, for instance, the more relevant your Facebook page is. The more people that read your blog, the more exposure you have. So in the same way that pop artists made money based on the likability of their work, so do people in social media. So now what do the critics say? Now I'm going to sum this up because the critics of social media say the exact same things of the critics of pop art, okay? The critics of pop art were art critics and the art authorities at the time in the 60s and 70s. They hated Andy Warhol. They hated him, they hated the whole movement, but the public loved it, okay? Similarly, people like myself in the creative community, the advertising world, the branding world, we hate social media because, yeah, see, someone's, right? Because it cheapens what we do, right? So what was the big objection to pop art? It's that these people don't have the pedigree. They're not trained. They don't have credentials. Just like you can't go out and write copy. That's what I do. I went to college to write copy. Don't be writing blog posts. Okay, don't be tweeting, all right? Right? And the video guy in the back of the room is, don't be shooting video now. Come on, man, you know. I got to make a living. I got to feed my family. So the other thing is, they don't have proper technique. Have you ever read any of these blog posts? Their English is terrible. I don't know where they went to school, but they didn't take, you know, they didn't have English from Mrs. Swyaki, let me tell you. She wasn't checking their grammar. And the last thing is, why we all hate it, is it devalues our work, right? Because now anybody can be a writer, anyone can be an artist, a designer, anyone that can shoot video. My kids can shoot and edit video. You know what I mean? And they do it really well. You know, and it's really funny sometimes, okay? So this is really upsetting to professionals like myself, okay? So, okay, the famous quote, you guys have all heard this, right? In the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes, okay? So that's just one quote. But when did he say that? He actually said it in 1968, okay? So I'm a year off. But basically, you have to look at, like, what was the media landscape in 1968? The media landscape was this. It was very narrow. It was radio, television, and print. Radio, though, it was, television, excuse me, was starting to become of its own, and it was really starting to explode, and Andy could really see this happening. So right now we had like one message fit everybody, right? But you could see on the tail of this was going to be, if you fast forward 10 years later, was going to be the segmentation of media. So now all of a sudden you had a whole bunch of television stations, a whole bunch of different types of magazines and radio stations, okay? It was still a one-to-many model, which we in advertising happen to love, by the way, okay? But it was segmented. So now we could pick our audiences, okay? Now, fast forward to 1996, which I picked that date because it's the opposite of 1969, by the way. All right? For all those who are going to send me hate mail tomorrow about this. But anyways, what was the big difference in 1996? It was the advent of the internet. Now, I'll tell you, most of my colleagues and a lot of people still live in this media world right here. They hate it. And they hated it then, and they continue to hate it, but this is the world they live in. We had segmented media choices, and then we had the internet, which we could have what was called a dialogue or a conversation. Everyone loves to talk about dialogues today, right? We're all dialoguing out there. And so, but this was a nice model because we as advertisers and as representatives of brands, we could control the conversation. As painful as it was, we could learn to adapt and control the situation. Well, what's social media like? Social media is nothing like that. This is the world that we've lived in now, and this is the world that we're going to live in pretty much for the rest of our lives, okay? And you see the guy with the RSS feed? That's guys like me, that's brands, okay? And then the rest of the people is the rest of the world. So now, instead of this one-to-many conversation that we've all been trained to deal with, we're in this many-to-many conversation, okay, where our voice is just one voice, and that's social media. And that's what I believe that Andy Warhol was really seeing, and he had that unique position because he was coming from pop art, which to me mirrors social media. And just look at some of the quotes that Andy Warhol came up with. Don't pay attention to what they write about you, just measure it in inches. What do you think he was talking about? What was he talking about? Who knows? Yell it out.
The spaces in the columns.
He was talking about blogs, right? Don't blogs, because people are going to make comments, right? And then when he said, I think everybody should like everybody, what was he talking about?
Facebook.
Facebook, there we go, right? And then he said, I got my first television and I stopped caring about having close relationships. What's he talking? Who has kids here? Okay? I guarantee you I know what my kids are doing right now. They're on this. What's this?
Facebook.
No, YouTube. They love YouTube. They know so many celebrities. They're all what I call micro celebrities, right? People we've never heard of, but apparently all their friends know about them. I never read, I just look at pictures. What was he talking about?
George Bush.
This is George Bush's favorite website. Huh? Close. What's one of the most popular social media? Huh? What? Nope. Pinterest.
Oh, geez.
Right?
That's too good.
I'm a deeply superficial person. What's he talking about? This one I love. Twitter, right? Life is a series of images that changes as they repeat themselves. What's this? Someone mentioned it earlier. And I'm only using these as representative sites. Flickr, Photo Bucket, right? Place where we keep our photos. it's not what you are that counts, it's what they think you are. Now, what social media site is that? You guys all know that one. LinkedIn! Yes, LinkedIn! Absolutely. Okay? And to me, this really summed it up. Okay? When Andy Warhol said, I'm bored with that line, I never use it anymore. My new line is, in 15 minutes, everybody will be world famous. And so the question is, it's really up to you. Do you think that Andy Warhol predicted social media? Yes or no? Of course, you can come to my blog tomorrow and sound off and let me know what you think, or check out this presentation on SlideShare and read my tweets. All right? Thank you.